Hi friends, welcome back. In this second part of War Poets, we are going to study two war poems by one by Wilfred Owen and another one by Siegfried Sassoon. So let's start with Wilfred Owen's Anthem for Doomed Youth. Now, this is a very metaphorical poem. There are many images of war used in this poem. There are many images of church funeral proceedings also used in this poem. It's a poem which draws parallels between the death of a soldier on battlefield and the death of a common man and the funeral rites and rituals which are followed on the death of a common man in day to day life, in civilian life, which the soldiers unfortunately do not get when they die on the battlefield, especially during the First World War. It definitely, again, the poem refers to First World War. Now, Anthem to Doomed Youth is a very famous poem by Wilfred Owen. It presents a very negative and pessimistic view of, the war. And earlier also in the previous lecture, we have heard and we have seen that Siegfried Sassoon as well as Wilfred Owen, both of them, they are anti-war. They both have a very negative point of view of war as something that is waste, something that is unjust, something that is very cruel and brutal, and it is useless because many lives are lost for no reason at all. So you will see in this poem Wilfred Owen's perspective on what he thinks about the world war when he witnesses the cruelties of war firsthand on the battlefront, right, and the experiences that he had. So talking about the title itself, if you see, we will be looking at anthem as in what it means and what it signifies in this particular poem. We will be looking at doomed youth, who is the youth that Wilfred Owen is referring to in this particular poem. And as I already mentioned, that one of the themes of the poem is the compare and contrast between the death of a soldier on the battlefield and the death of a common man, a civilian, and the kind of ceremonies that a civilian gets but a soldier does not get when he dies on a battlefront. Let's begin with this. So the first point that I would like to highlight, of course, I have already jotted down the agenda, a few points here, but slightly differing from that, the very first aspect is when you look at the poem, Anthem for Doomed Youth, it is a sonnet. It has in all 14 lines and it is divided into an octave and a sestet. When you read the poem, you will realize that both the stanzas, one stanza having 8 lines and another stanza having 6 lines. The first stanza and the second stanza, they move in the form of a question and answer, right? So there are in all 2 questions that Owen arises in his poem, and he also answers those questions in the poem simultaneously, right? Now, another aspect that you need to pay attention to, which I mentioned in the earlier lecture also, that the sonnet form during the Elizabethan age, it was written as love poems. Basically the sonnet was synonymous with love poems, right? And whether we talk about Spenser, you talk about Shakespeare, they all wrote love poems in the sonnet form. Now you have a completely different kind of an approach to the sonnet form here in Wilfred Owen's poem. The topic that he deals with is the death of a soldier and the funeral rites of a soldier, the rites which actually a soldier does not get, right? So this is presented, a very grim and pessimistic kind of theme is dealt with in the sonnet form here. So that's the first irony of the poem. It is the first irony, irony. That is the figure of speech I am talking about. It's the first irony of the poem that the sonnet form is used. The sonnet form is normally used for love poems. Wilfred Owen does not write a love poem here. Anthem to Doomed Youth. The title itself is very negative, and the theme that he deals with in his poem is the grim realities of war, the death of a soldier on the battlefield, and the ceremonial rites of a funeral which a soldier never receives when he dies on a battlefield is what Wilfred Owen deals with in his poem. So let's have a look at the slide here that I have. Moving on to the slide, yes. So Anthem for Doomed Youth was written by Owen in 1917, peak wartime. Let me repeat myself. The First World War took place between 1914 to 1918. We have to remember those dates. So this particular poem was written in 1917 when Owen was in hospital recovering from injuries and trauma resulting from his military service during the World War I. So if you remember in the earlier lecture, I mentioned about how he suffered shell shock injuries, both physical as well as mental, due to shell shock, that is bombing that takes place, and how he is, recovering in a hospital in Scotland where he meets Siegfried Sassoon. And it is Siegfried Sassoon who inspires Owen to write about his experiences in the form of poems, right? So this is one of those poems that he writes inspired by Sassoon. The poem laments the loss of a young life in war and describes the sensory horrors of combat. Now, when a poem lamenting something, especially lamenting the life, lamenting the death of a soldier, what does it suggest? Which form of poem does it suggest? It suggests a elegy, right? A sonnet deals with love poems. It deals with the topic of love, romance, whereas elegy deals with death. Now what we see is that in a sonnet form, the lamentation, the death of a soldier is being described. It's an elegiac poem lamenting the death of a soldier, the loss of a soldier in a sonnet form. You have to keep this in mind. Not only that, he describes in lots of images. Images are in a way metaphors. Metaphorically, he describes the sensory horrors. That is what you see, what you hear. Yes, this poem will also make you hear the sounds that you normally hear on a battlefield, right? So, sensory horrors of combat. Combat, the two armies fighting with each other, the allies and Axis. Because here no one is a friend and no one is an enemy, at least for me or you. So it is better that we take the names of the two opposite warring parties, that is Allies and Axis. And just for the sake of information, England was a part of Allies, right? So Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, Rupert Brooke, they were fighting on behalf of England, their motherland. So they were on the side of Allies. Just keep that in mind. So it describes the horrors of the combat, the fight that is going on between the countries, the soldiers. It takes particular issue with the official pomp and ceremony that surrounds war, gestured to by the word anthem in the title, arguing that church bells, prayers, and choirs are inadequate tributes to the realities of war. So talking about the theme of the poem, which I mentioned earlier, that he has an issue with all that official pomp and ceremony which normally surrounds war. It is very, rare in the case of, especially if I have to talk about the First World War. I'm not talking about the present day circumstances. You have to think in the context of the First World War that many of the soldiers, they lost lives on the battlefields, and before their dead bodies could be discovered for a proper funeral, they were either completely burnt out due to the shelling and bombing, or they were eaten up by scavengers, that is birds and animals, right? And many a times the dead bodies also rot because the war was taking place continuously for years and days. Who would risk their lives to gather the dead bodies of these soldiers to give them proper funeral? Right? So many of the soldiers who died during the First World War on battlefield, they could not get a proper funeral. And that is the grim reality that Wilfred Owen talks about, describes in his poem. And he compares and contrasts it with the calm and silent funeral ceremony which is normally given to a civilian, right? In civilian, when a civilian dies in normal day-to-day life in the society. So he is comparing and contrasting between the two, and he also, if you look at the title also, he calls it an anthem for doomed youth. Now anthem has two meanings. Anthem is sung when you are singing the glory of your country or glory of something. So we have our national anthem Jana Gana Mana, which sings the glory of our motherland India, right? So keep in mind, anthem is something that is sung when you are celebrating something. You are celebrating the glories of a land or the deeds of some person. The other meaning of anthem that we have is, in a church service, when a biblical passage is being sung by the choir, even that is all called an anthem. But try and understand that when a biblical passage is being sung by the choir, that also is a very peaceful moment. You are singing the glories of the Lord. So the long and short of it is that an anthem is a very positive song. But unfortunately, the anthem that we are reading here is for doomed youth, the second metaphor. Who is this doomed youth? Doom means, nothing fruitful. There's no fruitful outcome of life, that is doomed. And youth. Most of the soldiers fighting during the First World War were in their late teens, or they were very young. They were in their early 20s, and Wilfred Owen himself is a very good example of this. He was barely 21 when he was enrolled in the First World War. He was barely 23 when he died in the First World War. So, in a way, you can say that this is a kind of poem where, it's a kind of premonition where he is predicting his own death very early. Of course, Wilfred Owen was not expecting it, but then battle or war like situation is such that a soldier can never be sure whether the soldier will return alive, right? So this is a kind of anthem. Of course, it is not singing the glories at the first place. And second, it is a song or it is a poem about youth whose youth is doomed. Youth as a noun as well as an adjective. So the young man has no future. The young man who is enlisted or enrolled in war or battle has no future. Why? Because there are only two possibilities for a soldier, that either the soldier dies on the battlefield, or if the soldier returns alive, is either a handicap. Now, let me also tell you why I shouldn't be using the word either. It should be is handicap permanently for life. Now, handicap does not necessarily mean physically handicap only. A person need not be physically handicapped only. These soldiers, they suffer from PTSD, depression, post-war situations, right? The war-like situation is a trauma, not only for the common civilians who are not actively actually participating in the war. Even we are disturbed when we hear news that the Chinese are constantly attacking us on our borders, right? We are disturbed sitting comfortably in our houses. Imagine the soldiers who are fighting against these enemies, or maybe these other soldiers who are attacking us. What is their life? Is there a life at all at the first place? Because a youth has so many dreams of future. Every youth like you wants to make a bright future, wants to progress, wants to succeed, wants to achieve a lot in life. But once you are enrolled during the First World War, especially if I have to talk about the First World War scenario, a soldier, a youth enrolled as a soldier during the First World War had no future at all. Therefore, it is doomed youth. That is, either you die in the war, so there is nothing left, nothing like future left. And even if the soldier comes back alive, the soldier suffers both physically as well as mentally from post-war traumatic disorders and depression. That is some form of mental illness. And we know now that mental illness in itself also is a kind of handicap. It does not let you, or it disables you from thinking about a bright future or acting for a bright future or achieving something for yourself. Right? So in that way, the lives of these youth who are enrolled as soldiers in the First World War, you have to consider the word youth as referring to the soldiers, those who are enlisted during the First World War. So Wilfred Owen, if you have to take the case of Wilfred Owen himself, his also is a case of a doomed youth, because had he survived, we would have had a brilliant poet. We know Wilfred Owen only for his 5 poems that he was able to write when he was recovering from injuries, because by the end of the First World War, he died. Had he survived? Maybe we would have read many more poems by Wilfred Owen. But that is not the case over here. So we have looked at 2-3 things right now. First, I discussed the sonnet form, which is normally used to deal with themes of love or romance, which Wilfred Owen uses. That is, sonnet form is used by Wilfred Owen to describe the realities of war, right? And he talks about the funeral which a soldier never receives who dies on a battlefield. Point 1. The second point that I made was that the word anthem, what it refers to, there are 2 meanings of anthem. One, singing the glories of the country. So you have the example of a national anthem, like our own national anthem we have, which sings the glories of the Indian nation. The other meaning of anthem you are having is singing the glories of Lord, that by singing the biblical passages, you pick up passages from Bible and you sing the glories of Lord. It is sung by the choir in the church, right? So that is the second meaning of anthem, which means that if you see both the examples, anthem here actually means something that is very positive, something that sings glories of either the country or achievements of a person, or singing the glories of the Almighty God. But here we are not singing the glories of anyone. If at all there is an anthem, it is the anthem lamenting the death of youth, potential youth who could have made something out of their lives had they survived the First World War. But that is not the case here. We see that the youth that we are talking about here is, suffering the after effects of the war if they survive or they die in the war. So the poem's success basically, it lies in the stark contrast between the furious, explosive reality of the battle and the calm holiness of the church ritual. Wilfred Owen, he knew from his own personal experiences that war is meant for many of what war meant for his fellow soldiers. None of them, neither Wilfred Owen nor his fellow soldiers, his friends who were fighting alongside his side, were happy with the warlike situation. Many of them, they died in the trench warfare. If you remember from the first lecture series, the first of the lectures, War Poets, I discussed about this, that most of the time the First World War is also known as trench warfare. The trench warfare technique was used in the First World War, where the soldiers would hide themselves, their armament, their food and medical supplies in trenches, and they would spend days in the trenches fighting against the enemy soldiers. And if they survive, it is a wonder. So he was inspired to write, Wilfred Owen was inspired to write poems like Anthem for Doomed Youth because he saw at first hand, he witnessed firsthand the madness of mass killing, and he likens it to the slaughter of animals. If you remember from the earlier lecture, I mentioned this killing of cattle. The soldiers are compared, it's a metaphorical reference that Wilfred Owen makes, where the soldiers dying in the battlefield are compared to cattle that are slaughtered for their meat, right? And the butcher, while slaughtering the animals, is very detached, right? If you love your pet, you are not going to slaughter it, will you? You will not. You will not fight against your own friends in a battle. You can't. You become very emotional. You become very impassioned. But then warlike situation, the First World War, the soldiers on both the sides, they don't know each other, but they are out there to kill each other. Because if one does not kill the other will definitely kill this one. Right? They don't even know each other in real life, yet they are forced to kill each other in order to survive. Right? So it is a kind of slaughtering that is taking place, unfortunately. And that is what basically Wilfred Owen talks about in his poem. It also talks about, moving on to the next slide, the title Anthem for Doomed Youth, as I already mentioned, is an irony in itself. The title also is an irony. Not only the poem, the form of the poem, that is the sonnet form which is being used, is irony. Even the title itself is an irony, because anthem is something that is positive. Youth is something that is very positive and promising, but it is doomed youth. Anthem is something that you celebrate something, but doomed is completely contrast to it. Right? So there is nothing positive in the title also, and that's the irony. Though there are two words in comparison to one which is positive, which is negative, that is anthem and youth, they are very positive. They give very positive, they have positive connotations. But doomed has a very negative kind of a connotation. And in all, the title itself becomes very negative because there is no anthem here. No one is singing the glories of the youth. In fact, it is just a grim reality of how the youth is doomed, fighting a war which is not even their personal war. You know, it is not even a war where they are concerned directly. Clear? Not only that, apart from that, an anthem is arousing. I have the meanings over there on the slide. If you can see, it is a composition which is based on biblical passage, singing by a choir in a church service. And putting anthem in the title, Owen gives the readers the impression about something glorious or solemn. You know, something that is calm, something that is peaceful. But actually, there is nothing peaceful in the poem. Because Wilfred Owen is constantly making you feel, sensorily he is making you feel through images, the actual battlefield, right? So, however, the anthem is for doomed youth, which indicates a dreary concept of no hope, no future for the younger generation. It is this younger generation who are enlisted either by force or willingly into for the First World War as soldiers. And once they are enrolled as soldiers, there is nothing glorious. They come back either completely mentally and physically hurt, or they lose their lives. Right? So structured as a Petrarchan sonnet with a Shakespearean rhyme scheme, it is an elegy or lament for the death. As I already told you that it's basically an elegy put in a sonnet form. So that is an irony also again, because a sonnet is used for as, you know, a sonnet is basically a love poem, and there is no love over here. People fighting with each other, there is no love or romance there. You have to understand that. So Owen begins with a bitter tone as he asks rhetorically, what passing bells or mourning will sound for those soldiers who die like cattle in an undignified mass? The normal procedure is that when someone dies, the church bells are rung and a funeral procession takes place. Then the dead person along with the coffin, you know, inside the coffin, the dead person inside the coffin, it is buried, and flowers are scattered on the, the grave. And there are psalms which are sung for the peace of the soul. There is an obituary that is given for the peace of the soul. But nothing like this, this ceremonial ritual, funeral ritual. The soldiers, they'd never get this kind of ceremonial ritual, especially during the First World War. I'm talking about the First World War scenario. You have to think about that. They are not granted the rituals and rights of good Christian civilians back home. This is what the civilians can afford, but the soldiers fighting on the battlefront, they never get this kind of ceremonial funeral. They do not get real prayers, only rifle fire. Sensorily, Wilfred Owen makes you realize how it feels being on the battlefield. You hear the constant bullets being fired, the rifles being fired, bombing taking place, shelling taking place, the sounds, the loud noises around you, and people, soldiers being cut up and or hurt, and they are screaming in pain. These are all the sounds that you hear. And if at all anything can be compared to choirs, their only choirs are the shells and bugles. The shells, that is the bombing that is taking place, is one of the sounds that you constantly hear on a battlefield. The other one is a bugle. The bugle is a semi-hemisphere sort of a musical instrument, and during those times a bugle was used to mark the beginning and the end of a war. So choir is basically, a group of singers singing together the glories of Lord in church. So if at all there is any music, that is an indication of music that you hear. Sensory experience is what Wilfred Owen is trying to give you in this poem. So the sensory organ that is active over here is the ear. And he describes this only noises. There are no sounds or music on the battlefield. There are only noises that you hear. And what are those noises? They are the noises of the rifle fire and the shells blasting. And if at all, if there is any other sound that you hear on the battlefield, it is that of the bugles, right? So the first set of imagery is violent, featuring weapons and harsh noises of war. The first stanza, when you read, you will realize that Wilfred Owen is actually describing war as he witnessed as a soldier during the First World War. And he gives you when you're reading it, you can imagine, you can feel those noises around you, you can feel the pain of the soldiers, you can feel it is frightening. Losing your life any moment, being blasted or bombed, is not a very happy experience. Anyone would be scared. Even the soldiers are humans. Even they are scared that any moment they can lose their lives. But in spite of that, they fight. And when they die, they don't get a proper ceremonial funeral also. That is what Wilfred Owen laments in this particular poem. So the first set of imagery is very violent, and it describes the weapons, the sounds made by the weapons, and all the harsh noises that you see during the war. It is a set of contrast. It is set in contrast to the images of church. In the later part of the poem, you will come across the description of, a funeral procession, the ceremonial last rites which are given to a dead person in the church. And it is compared and contrasted to the death of a soldier on the battlefield. Owen is suggesting organized religion cannot offer much of consolation to these dying on the front. Whatever amount of prayers you do in the church, it is not going to give any peace. Normally we tell we wish for the dead person that his soul must rest in peace. That is what we pray to the God. That is what, the prayers are given for the dead person in the church as a funeral rite. But then these prayers, they don't reach these soldiers dying on the battlefront. They don't enjoy, or they don't get the opportunity of a proper funeral that a civilian can get living peacefully in the society, right? The poet muses that the young men will not have candles. Candles are also lit in front of God, in front of Christ in the church, in the name of the dead person. Who is going to light candles for the soldiers? Of course, their family would. But then, will that candle lights and those prayers ever reach the soldiers who have died on the battlefront, or those who are still fighting on the battlefront? No. The light will only be reflected in the eyes of the dead soldiers or the only people who are there to lament the death of the fellow soldiers is those soldiers who are alive. No one else can reach the dead soldiers lying on the battlefield. Right? In a normal society, civilians, when a person dies, there will be the near and dear ones. All the people living in the immediate society will also turn up for the funeral procession. But who would come for a soldier who dies on the battlefield? No one. There would be only those soldiers who are alive who would lament the death of their fellow soldier on the battlefield. And that is the only funeral rite available for a soldier who has died on the battlefield. Right? So, the prayers of their fellow soldiers who are alive. So, they must have substitutions for their coffin covers, pals, their flowers and their slow dusk. These are some of the rites or some of the ceremonies which are done, that a dead body is covered with a piece of cloth. The coffin is covered with a piece of cloth, and the coffin is buried. The dead body is buried in a grave, and once it is buried, flowers are strewn on the graveyard, and all those people who have lost someone, how they grieve by covering their houses with curtains. No bright lights are put on, or all kinds of lights or all kinds of celebrations are put off for certain period of time. But these soldiers dying on the battlefield, they receive no coffin cover, no coffin cover. Coffin cover is the cloth which is put on the dead body. There's no coffin cloth, which is called pall. There are no flowers. Who will bring flowers on the battlefield? There are no flowers. There's no coffin. There's no grave. And their slow dusk. Slow dusk has two indications here. One, that is, you are losing life. The life of a person, it begins from sunrise. Sunrise is compared to the birth of a child. Afternoon is compared to the middle age, and evening to the old age, and dusk, finally when it is dark, it means that the person has died. This is a kind of metaphorical images which are used by the poets generally in poetry. So the only mourning that is available for the dead soldiers on battlefield is the slow dusk. That is the night which is approaching. The sun is setting and the night is approaching. That's the only lamentation, that's the only mourning that is available for these dead soldiers, grieving these dead soldiers. So the poem has a note of finality, of lingering sadness, and an inability to avoid the reality of death and grief. So Wilfred Owen, he concludes the poem with a kind of a sense of hopelessness, right? He ends the poem with a sense of hopelessness, a kind of sadness, because no one can actually give the soldiers what they deserve. They cannot give the soldiers a proper funeral that they deserve. The only possible thing that the dead soldiers get is more of sounds, gunshots, and bombing that is constantly taking place on the battlefield. The sounds of bugle when they are alive and when they are dead, the scenario does not change, right? And there is grieving only by those soldiers who are alive. The candle lights are in the eyes of the soldiers who are alive. Candle lights here refers to the lament, the mourning that is expressed on the death of someone. That is the only thing that is available. So with that, the poet ends the poem with a kind of sadness and hopelessness, right? So now moving on to the next poem by another major war poet, that is Siegfried Sassoon. Earlier also we have seen that it is Siegfried Sassoon who inspires Wilfred Owen to write poems based on his experiences of the First World War. So now let's look at Siegfried Sassoon. Now before that, let me give you a brief recap of what we have already seen. We have already seen two poems by two different war poets. One by Rupert Brooke. Rupert Brooke celebrates, he glorifies war and he glorifies the life and sacrifice of a soldier, right? A soldier who is patriotic. A soldier who is patriotic is heroic. And when the soldier dies on the battlefield, his sacrifice is glorified in the name of patriotism in the poetry of Rupert Brooke. We saw in Wilfred Owen the harsh realities of the battlefield, the war front, where the soldiers die a hopeless death, where many a times there is no one to claim their dead bodies so that a proper funeral, ceremonial funeral can be given to those dead bodies. Which means that during the First World War, many soldiers died and they were not even given a proper ceremonial funeral. I talked to you about the conditions of the First World War, that constantly war was raging and there was no possibility of, lifting and taking the dead bodies off the battlefield so that they could be given a proper farewell. So that's the sorry state. And most of these soldiers, they were youth. Youth is full of, desires, full of spontaneity, enthusiasm to achieve and make a great future. But these soldiers fighting during the First World War, they had no future. Therefore, Wilfred Owen uses the metaphor doomed youth. So it's a very pessimistic kind of a approach that Wilfred Owen has in comparison to Rupert Brooke. Now we have another poet, Siegfried Sassoon. And his poem, the poem that we are going to look at, is Suicide in Trenches. Suicide in the Trenches. First thing, I'll repeat myself, that the First World War was also known as, trench war or trench warfare. The technique that was used was trench warfare. So I was also talking about, how living in the trenches was not a very happy situation for the soldiers, but they have no choice, because if they wanted to live, if they wanted to survive from the bombing, shelling and firing that was taking place constantly on the battlefield, the trenches were the only resort. The trenches were also a place of not only protection for the soldiers, but also a place where they could store their armament, where they could keep their food, which they would be consuming for the days to come, their medical supplies, till fresh supplies reach them. And many a times these fresh supplies, they takes days and months to reach them. And I was also describing the life in the trenches, that the trenches can be infested with mosquitoes. One of the poets died of a mosquito bite. So we have seen that also in the biographies of these poets. The trenches are infested with even snakes and all kinds of, dangerous insects, poisonous insects also. Many a times the dead soldiers, the dead bodies of the soldiers would roll into the trenches, and any effort to throw those dead bodies out or remove those dead bodies from the trenches would make the living soldiers also dead. They would leave the living soldiers also dead. So no one would dare to get out of those trenches. So the soldiers who were still alive, they had to spend their days in that stench of the dead bodies, the dirty smell that is coming from those rotting dead bodies which have fallen into the trenches. So you have, it's that kind of life that Siegfried Sassoon talks about. Now if you pay attention to the title of the poem, it's a suicide. Now who commits suicide in a war? The only thing that you see in a war is that the person is killed in a war. A soldier becomes a martyr in the war. No one commits a suicide in the war. But this is the sad reality of the First World War that Siegfried Sassoon describes. This is an actual incident that took place. So Siegfried Sassoon has been a witness to this actual incident that took place. There was this fellow soldier who was very young. You know, many a times the soldiers who were forcibly enrolled during the First World War were barely 17 or 18 because there was a dearth of manpower. So all the youngsters, they were forcibly enrolled into they were enlisted as soldiers during the First World War. So this young soldier about whom Siegfried Sassoon talks about in his poem is at first he has a very glorious ideas of war, like even Wilfred Owen, who was very young when he joined the war, also had. But it is only when he experiences life in the trenches and when he experiences this, you know, the actual war that is being fought, and when the young soldier sees that how the soldiers are dying or they are being bombed to pieces in front of his eyes, it's a very ghastly kind of a experience. It's a horrible experience for a very young soldier who is inexperienced in war. And obviously, apart from that, I was just talking about the life in the trenches. It's not at all comfortable. Many a times, even the soldiers may not get food to eat for days because the fresh supplies have been cut off due to war raging around. So they have to make do, that is, continue with the war without even food to eat for days together, without food and water. So our young soldier here that Siegfried Sassoon describes or talks about is someone who is habituated to a peaceful life, a life of, if not luxury, but at least of comfort, right? As you can see on the first slide I have over here, that our poet is very comfortable before joining the First World War. But then unfortunately he sees all these horrible happenings around him, and he fires himself. You know, he shoots himself in the trenches. That's the poem about. That is, either ways he is going to be dead. Either he would be killed by the enemy or he kills himself. So we have a young soldier here who is unable to tolerate the brutalities of the war. He is unable to, come to terms with the difficulties of the war, the difficulty of the trench life, and kills himself. So if you look at the slide, Suicide in the Trenches by the English poet Siegfried Sassoon. Siegfried Sassoon was writing between 1886 to 1967, which means that he has witnessed the Second World War also, is one of the many poems Sassoon composed in response to First World War. So this incident that he talks about in this particular poem, that is Suicide in Trenches, is something that he has witnessed personally, right? It reflects his own notable service in that especially bloody conflict. Sassoon was a brave and gallant upper class officer. I think I mentioned this, that in comparison to Wilfred Owen, Sassoon was a first class officer. He was a rank officer, and obviously a rank officer normally gave commands and orders to the soldiers to fight. In comparison to the soldiers, the rank officers are, they are not very actively involved in the war to a very large extent unless it is an unavoidable condition. So Sassoon was not very happy with these class wars which were taking place at that point of time. For the sake of protecting themselves, many a times these warmongers, that is the political leaders and the civilian hawks, if you can look at the last line, I'm talking about that. And many a times even the high rank officers also, they would push the soldiers on the war front to fight, and they would sit comfortably and protect themselves, right? So this is what Sassoon did not like, that why the soldiers should lose their lives at the cost of some people who are leading a life of safety and luxury. So Sassoon felt contempt, hatred for the political leaders and civilian war hawks. War hawks are those people who benefit from war. What kind of people benefit from the war? It is basically the political leaders and all those business people who have industries which make weapons. right? The people who have industries which which make weapons, which manufacture weapons, they were profiting a lot during these world wars. And they are very comfortable, leading a luxurious life, safe in their homes. And that is what fills Siegfried Sassoon with hatred, that these people who are safe in their power and comfort sent young men off to die in huge battles that seemed futile and pointless. Even Siegfried Sassoon felt that these battles, the First World War or any battle, was futile, useless, and it was waste. Waste in what sense? Waste of young lives. So, Suicide in the Trenches is a poem by Siegfried Sassoon. It was published in his collection Counter Attack and Other Poems, which was published in 1918, post-war most probably. And like the other poems, the Suicide in Trenches also, it draws upon Sassoon's own experience. I'm just winding up. It draws upon his own experiences as a soldier in the British Army during the First World War. The poem provides an account of the war that sharply contrasts with some of the more romanticized perspectives. So if you look at Rupert Brooke, he romanticizes war by singing glories of war and celebrating the heroism of the soldiers. Whereas Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon, they don't see any kind of glory in war. Rather, they feel that war is a kind of futile waste, which only wastes the life of people. There are many innocent people who are losing lives, right? So it sharply contrasts with some of the more romanticized perspective offered by poets like Jesse Pope. There war poets, there were many war poets, and there were female war poets also. If you are thinking from where did the women become a part of the war, there were nurses and doctors, female nurses and doctors who were sent on the battlefront to tend to the wounded soldiers. So yes, we do have female war poets also, and Jesse Pope is one of them. And you have Rupert Brooke. They romanticize war and celebrate the heroism of the soldiers, which is quite contrast to Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen. The poem speaker begins by describing a typical soldier, young, innocent, and somewhat naive. Naive means someone who is very ignorant about the realities of war. So when our youngster here who commits suicide eventually joins war, he is completely unawares of the realities of war, the brutality of war, the cruelty of war, right? He has heard only about the glories of war. So he comes very enthusiastically to fight as a soldier in the First World War. But unfortunately, tragically, the horrific reality of war drives him to commit suicide in the trenches. The poem then criticizes the public at back home, that is all those people, civilians who are sitting comfortably in their homes, which it claims encourages young men to give up their lives without fully acknowledging the terrors that await simple soldier boys. Wilfred Owen was a boy. He was barely 21 when he joined the war. Siegfried Sassoon writes about another young soldier who is completely inexperienced. You know, people have the habit of giving false accounts of the glories of war, which makes young men want to join war in order to become famous, in order to be called heroic, without actually knowing the realities of war. And what happens in the end is this, that either they are killed in the war or they commit suicide. So this is briefly the paraphrase of the poem. I knew an innocent young man who became a soldier. This young man had a happy, carefree life. That's how all the youngsters are, even you are, that you are very happy and carefree in life. He used to sleep peacefully all through the dark, empty night, and he would then rise cheerfully in the morning, whistling along with the birds. At war, he became depressed and scared. You know, till the time he had not joined the war, this young man was very happy with bright dreams of future. But once he joins the war, he becomes depressed and he is very scared. Driven to despair by the relentless explosions which are taking place around him, and also the lack of availability of freedom, at the same time good food, homemade food, and alcohol. Alcohol is mentioned in the poem, but not exactly for the want of comforts. It is basically because the young soldier did not get even proper food to eat, the insect bites, the lack of alcohol, he shot himself in the head. After that, he was quickly forgotten. You know, once the soldiers die, no one remembers them. After the initial, medals which are being given, they are awarded with medals, and we remember them once, either during the Republic Day or the Independence Day, and then we forget. Can you name any of the soldiers who died during the Kargil war? I'm afraid. Even I don't remember, right? So that's the sorry state, that these soldiers, they lose their lives for us who are living comfortably in our houses, and we don't even know their names. We very quickly forget them. All you self-satisfied people, this is Siegfried Sassoon. He is scolding. He is being very harsh with his audience. He says, all you self-satisfied people back at home, have fire in your eyes as you applaud young soldiers marching through the streets. You know, whenever we see someone in a uniform, we immediately we do a salute, and we try to mimic them, and we try to behave, we try to show a lot of pride towards them. Now Sassoon warns the public that don't do this. Rather, remember the soldiers who are dying, and remember that it's not easy to be on the battlefront, right? And to be thankful to the soldiers rather than mimicking the soldiers by giving them a salute or talking useless, empty words of pride. After the soldiers pass has both the meanings: passing in a regiment as well as passing, that is dying on the battlefield. Go scurry back home and hope to God you will never have to experience the hell that is war, which destroyed all our innocence and joy. So he concludes the poem and warns the public that you should thank yourself and you should thank your lucky stars that you are not experiencing what the young soldier experienced on the battlefield. Thank you so much.